Today, we're going to master FastAPI logging, from basic setup to production-ready cloud-native and external logging. Let's go! Here I am in a completely empty directory. To get our project up and running, we can run uv-init. That'll set up the basic scaffolding for our project. For FastAPI, there's really only two dependencies that we need, so let's add them with uv-add. I'm going to use NeoVim and create my first file, basic logging. In our newly created file, let's quickly create a mighty simple FastAPI application. Create an endpoint at the root location. I'm also going to import logging, get the logger with the name of the file, and then info log a message. Open up a new terminal window on the right and curl localhost on port 8000. Great, we see that the endpoint is returning our status healthy, that there was a request made to the root endpoint, and we don't see our log statement. I have a great video that explains everything about logging in Python. Link is in the description. Let's quickly fix that by creating our own handler. In here you can see that I've defined a new formatter. I create a new stream handler, assign it the formatter. I also set our logger to log level info. And lastly, add a newly created handler to our logger. Back to our terminal, we can run the file again and make the request again. And then we can finally see that our info log is printed. So far, so good. However, I kind of don't like that our log statements look a lot different from the Uvicorn log statements. And that is because Uvicorn creates its own logger instance and sets up its own handler. So the only thing we have to do here is basically override that handler and assign it to use our own handler. So let's go back to our file and do exactly that. To do so, we can ask the root logger what loggers already exist. And then if the name is Uvicorn, we get the Uvicorn logger, we clear out all existing handlers, we assign our own handler, and we set the level to info. To demonstrate what is happening, let's print out the name of everything that the root logger returns. Go to our terminal and let's start the server again. You can immediately see that two things are happening. First of all, we print out all existing loggers that are registered to the Python root logger. So we can see that there's a uvicorn.error, there's also a uvicorn, and there's a bunch more. Now, the Uvicorn child loggers, like .error, they're all configured to propagate their own log record upwards to the root Uvicorn logger. So it should be enough to just override the root logger and set the handler there, and let the root Uvicorn logger handle all printing to the screen. But the second one is a bit annoying, right? We can see that the Uvicorn logs are still printed the way that Uvicorn formats them. That is because Uvicorn, while booting up the server, configures its own logging instance. So the only thing we have to do here is make sure that Uvicorn does not do that. I'm going to clear out the print statement because we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to add logconfig is none to the Uvicorn run function. Save that and boot up the server again. And now we can finally see that our Uvicorn logs are printed exactly the way that we want them to be printed. Basic logging works, but let's make it beautiful. While the standard library has you covered, it is rather verbose. There are a few libraries out there that improve drastically over the standard library, like structlog and Loguru. While both are absolutely fantastic, for this video I'm going to pick Loguru. Okay, let's get Loguru set up. Quit the server and copy our current file. We also need to add Loguru as our dependency and open up the file. First things first, let's get rid of all of this stuff. And instead, we're going to import the logger from Loguru. Let's also get rid of this one now. And let's boot up the server to see what this gives us. The Uvicorn logs aren't printed when I boot up the server, because remember, all the way in the bottom, we've configured the log config to none for Uvicorn. Okay, let's run our curl. And we can see that Loguru prints our log really nicely. Now the only thing left to do is make sure that Loguru also handles all the Uvicorn logs. The problem is that we don't have access to the handler that Loguru has. So we need to have a different way to intercept whatever Uvicorn tries to log and then let Loguru handle that. To get this intercepting up and running, we have to create our own custom handler. I'm going to call it intercept handler because that's exactly what it's going to do. And this is all a bit boilerplate, but the most important thing in this custom handler is the last line. First, we're going to take the Loguru logger, we're going to supply a bunch of options to the log statement. And secondly, we're going to call the log function on the Loguru logger object. In here, we supply the level and we supply the original message. And then the only thing for us left to do is to make sure that we assign this intercept handler to the Uvicorn logger. Okay, let's try this out. Reboot our server, and there we go. But what if I want pretty logs in development and structured logs in production? Environment variables are perfect for this. I'm going to copy my current file and open it up in new Vim. First things first, let's get the current environment variable. Loguru doesn't easily give access to its handler, so we need a different way of configuring it. The first step to arrange this is to remove the existing setup from Loguru. We can do this super easy by calling the remove function on the logger object. By calling the logger.add function, we can add our own sinks, filters, formatters, and whatever we want. We're just going to log to standard out. For production, I want almost the same thing, but I'm going to pass in the serialize boolean. What this does for us, without us having to create our own handler or formatter, is write the logs to our output, which is standard out, but in JSON format. Let's try this out. I'm going to supply env prod and then run our server. And isn't this super nice? Great logs are useless if you cannot really search them properly in production. But in this amazing tech world that we live in, if you use cloud-native services, you're kinda done. GCP Cloud Logging already scrapes all its standard out and standard error of all its services, and AWS CloudWatch does the same. However, if you do not use cloud-native services, you might need a bit more setup. Let me show you how you can set up Sentry for error tracking in FastAPI. After you've created your own free Sentry account and have logged in, we can create a project. I'm going to pick Python. Yep, I use FastAPI. Let's add our dependency on Sentry. Open up our file again. Import the Sentry SDK. And copy-paste this init function. I also only want this to happen on production. They also supply a nice example for an exception. So let's add that into the bottom of our file as a new endpoint. Okay, let's boot this up in production and call the Sentry debug endpoint. Navigate back to Sentry itself. We can see that there is a zero division error. BetterStack is a fantastic logging solution, so let me show you how to send your logs towards BetterStack. To get BetterStack up and running, navigate to your project after you've created an account, hit telemetry, and connect the source. I'm just going to call this FastAPI. And if we scroll down a bit, we should be able to see Python for logging. Let's hit connect source, and you'll be supplied with your source token and your ingestion host. Back to our application. I'm going to use HTTPX for my request client and open up the file again. Import HTTPX and create an async sync that takes the message as only parameter. In here, the ingestion host is going to be my post request URL and source token is going to be my bearer authorization token. And now that we have a sync, we just have to supply that to Loguru. Add a new logger, add our async sync as sync, and set serialize to true. Now let's boot up the server again. Uvicorn has booted up. Back in BetterStack, we can go to Livetail, and we can see that our logs appear nicely in BetterStack with all the information that we want. There we go, from basic logging to cloud scale observability. Cloud native logging means just send your logs to standard out in JSON format and let the platform do the work. Other tools are a breeze to set up. Like and subscribe if this helped you set up your FastAPI logging. Happy logging!